Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Julia Blackwell. Julia and I are going to be talking on the topic, what healthy fascia feels like and what causes it to become unhealthy. Welcome, Julia.
Hi, Myrna. So nice to be here.
Yeah, it's lovely to have this conversation, and this is new content for the show. Never talked on this before, and I love this. Love learning along with you and bringing you new content. All right, so let me give you a brief introduction. Julia Blackwell is a fascia release practitioner, educator, and creator of the Fascia Remedy. Julia was born with severe nerve damage to her right shoulder and grew up going through the broken Western medicine system. After 23 years of being told her condition would never improve and feeling no lasting relief from any treatments, she was introduced to a unique type of fascia release bodywork in 2010. In just 3 months of this fascia specific work, she saw more improvement in the feel and function of her arm than she had in 16 years of traditional treatment. This experience catapulted Julia into learning everything she could about fascia, the critical role it plays in her movement and overall health, and how to restore it. After learning multiple modalities and working with clients for 12 years, she formulated her own approach to bodywork and foam rolling work called the Fascia Remedy. All right. So, if you're listening right now, you're wondering what exactly is the fascia? I never heard of it. Fun fact, Julie and I were just talking before we started the recording, and you can also have a fascia in your house. But we are talking now about the fascia in your body. So let's unpack what exactly is the fascia, what type of tissue is it, and why does it cause pain?
Yeah, so much to unpack. But fascia is connective tissue. It's an elaborate three-dimensional connective tissue system that we have on the inside. So one of my favorite analogies is to envision it like plastic wrap. So this plastic wrap wraps around every single muscle fiber, every single muscle, every bone, ligament, tendon, bone, blood vessel, nerve, organ. It's all wrapped like this three-dimensional plastic wrap suit that we have on the inside. So if we all remember the skeleton from science class where it's being held up, we all thought that the bones just stayed together on their own and everything was built around this structure, but fascia is in fact the thing that is holding us all together. So if it were to magically disappear out of your body, you would go tumbling to the ground in a pile of bone fragments and goo. So,
Wow.
yes.
Okay. All
So
right.
yeah, because fascia wraps around everything, it therefore is going to influence the position and function of everything. So, what we've typically been led to believe is, oh, it's just this disc problem, or just a joint problem, or just a muscle problem. It's actually a fascia problem.
Okay.
It's a much more wide range system that for the longest time when they were dissecting cadavers and things, they'd be like, "What's all this wrapping around the muscle? Get it out of here." And they would literally throw it in the trash. So, this is very new research just in the last 50 years or so that we're really starting to uncover just how important fascia is. But it has many, many roles in the body. But I think the one that makes the most sense as it pertains to pain is to think of, again, those areas of plastic wrap like tissue crumpling up into a balled up piece of plastic wrap. So when
Mhm.
that happens, a whole series of muscles and bones are going to shift out of place and create an imbalance in the body. And so the most common result that happens is either limited mobility, but most likely it's pain. So again, a lot of things that we might think, oh, this is just a pinched nerve, or this is just a herniated disc, or it's frozen shoulder, whatever these things are that we think is an individual problem is like, oh, that's just your fascia being way too constricted in some area of the body.
Hmm. That makes sense. That makes sense. Now, I always thought when I saw this, I mean, I don't like to get too much information before I do an interview because I want to be curious and learning like with my audience, you know what I mean? So I don't do a lot of research because I want to come from a place of curiosity. But when I thought of fascia, I thought it was and you said connective tissue, I'm thinking like a tendon or a ligament or something that connects the bone or to the muscle or something. But you're saying it's like a wrap that's around it. Um, and I does it get thin? How does it get crumpled up into a ball?
Yeah, so the thing I've heard before is if people are starting to familiarize themselves with fascia, they think of it almost like a sausage casing that goes around the outside of the muscle, but it isn't a sausage casing. It's this layer on layer on layer system. So all of those things can start to stick to itself
Ah,
and
okay.
shrink up and become dehydrated. And that can happen for a variety of reasons. So, most commonly, it's from a lack of movement. I mean, none of us are really moving the way our bodies are intended, myself included, right? It's so difficult in this life where we're sitting, we're working, we're doing the same kinds of motions over and over again. So those types of repetitive movements as well can contribute stress and trauma, whether it be physical trauma, like an injury we've had, like a car accident, something like that, or emotional trauma, inflammation. Any of these things could cause fascia to start to become unhealthy. So it could happen for a variety of reasons, but it's mostly, it doesn't get thin. It's not going to change its actual structure, but it mostly gets dehydrated and brittle. Um,
Okay.
That's more along the lines of what's happening in
That's
there.
what happening to awesome. Now, in your particular case, you said that you were born with severe nerve damage. So how did your nerve damage, um, so the question is, how does the nerve connect to the fascia? And what was your exact diagnosis of your problem?
Yes. So, well, I was almost a 10-pound baby.
Huh?
And in the process of being born, I got stuck. So when they pulled me out, they ended up stretching an area of nerves called the brachial plexus and therefore diagnosed me with something called Erb's palsy. And while I did have a nerve regraft surgery when I was about 4 months old, which helped my arm come back online a little bit, if you will, I
Mhm.
still had a lot of limited mobility, limited strength, and just an incessant amount of tension and uncomfortable feelings in my arm. So I grew up going through your typical Western medicine treatment options. So I went to occupational therapy, physical therapy, massage, tons of doctor's appointments, chiropractic, really anything that the Midwest in the 90s could offer me, which, to be fair, maybe is not as extensive as it is now, but really nothing at all made a difference. If I
Mm,
felt any difference at all, it would be for hours or maybe a day, and things seemed to go right back to where they started.
mm.
And really, anyone that I interacted with was telling me that there was nothing that could be done because it was nerve damage, right? So
Yeah.
what I discovered later on, it was in about 2011, 2010, 2011, that I met someone who did a very unique type of fascia work. And kind of like you were saying, I went to school for exercise physiology and I barely understood what fascia was. They had just talked about, oh, this is what is attaching the tendons and ligaments to bones, just like you said. Had no idea there was so much more. But fascia can actually communicate within itself outside of the nervous system, which is a new and fascinating point of research. So while fascia and nerves are talking to each other because it's the body and they communicate, and also fascia wraps around nerve endings,
Mm,
fascia can also have this separate whole system of communication outside of that. So, what I found is when I started working more on my right arm in the fascia, I was actually able to regain some mobility, some strength. I relieved a lot of tension and even had some emotional releases, which we could talk about at some point if we like. But it was almost like a workaround. If the nerves weren't firing, I was actually still able to communicate with my body and get change to happen by just communicating with the fascia.
okay. So that's awesome. All right. Um, yeah, I understand now what the fascia is and how important it is. You said it doesn't thin out, it just gets brittle and maybe dehydrated, and that's what causes it to, give us pain. But you also say in your work that we can strengthen it. So how do we strengthen it?
Yeah, I use those words interchangeably with restore space, restore hydration. Strengthening fascia just mainly means getting it to the healthiest place possible. I'm more on the side of figuring out how to restore it through tools like foam rollers and massage balls and recovery tools that you likely already have. They're just sitting in your closet, maybe somewhere, because you're not fully sure how to use them. That happens. I've done the same thing where you're figuring out what to do with all of these things that you have.
Okay.
Um, but oh my gosh, I like went on a tangent and totally lost my train of thought.
How are we strengthening it, right?
Oh, that's right.
The
Yes.
tools,
Oh
right?
my gosh. This is what happened. It's not even Monday. I can't even give the excuse that it's Monday. So what I largely focus on is combining compression, which is just what it sounds like, compressing an area of your tissue, and then doing some type of active movement in your body. So it is more like an exercise than it is like a very relaxing time where you're just laying on a ball and not moving for long periods of time. It's more like an exercise, but fascia really, really needs movement in order to repattern and start to rehydrate and change. So that's why, a lot of what we're offered these days is very passive. So we lay on a table, someone else attempts to change our body for us. We're
Mhm.
kind of checked out. We're thinking about our to-do list. Or again, maybe, yeah, we're just
Sleep.
laying, yeah, we're laying on a trigger point for a while, or maybe blasting our quad with a Theragun. None of these things are really activating the right cells and responses in the fascia. So I'm very big on the movement component. And a lot of that can be as simple as move your body more, and your fascia is going to get healthier and stronger and be more functional. Like it can be really as simple as that, especially things that you don't do very often. Like, can you hang from a bar? Can you twist from side to side? Like how often in your regular life are you reaching over your head or twisting, right? So those things are really simple, but we can also do that with something like a roller where instead of aimlessly rolling up and down our thigh muscle, can we stop on one spot, bend the knees and straighten them, rock the heels side to side, try to get that more three-dimensional stretch because that's really what our fascia needs in order to unstick itself and get that hydration back and actually function at its optimal level.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. So let me introduce what I know and what I do on a regular basis when I go to the gym. There's the only place I do it. But about a year ago, I started having knee pain. And, I was listening to a sermon from my one of the online pastors, wasn't my pastor. And he gave a statistic that like 60% of Americans or something is going to get knee replacements. And he said, well, I am seeing that. I rebuke that. You're not going to get a knee replacement. And I said to myself, you know what? I better go to the doctor because I don't want to have a knee replacement. So I went to the doctor. He did his little, imaging thing, and he gave me a cortisol shot in my knee. But he also told me, oh, I don't know if it's fascia, I don't remember that word, but he also said that the muscles in or the tendons or something that's in my thigh are constricted, and he gave me some exercises to stretch them out. And one of them is the foam roller.
Nice.
So whenever I go to the gym, because I don't have one at home, after I do my gym work, I go lay on the floor and I stretch out my side tendons or fascia, if that's what we're doing. And I also do my back because I'm tight in the back as well. But I walk every day. So it's not because I don't have any movement. I'm not quite sure how that tightened up or whatever. But the great thing about this story is that it worked because I don't have any more pain in my knee. And my back and everything, it's released. So I share that to say that one of the things that you do is you call that the fascia remedy, which is releasing the fascia by postural alignment body work. So how does my little story fit into what you do, and does it fit in?
Yeah, well, first off, congrats. That's so great that you were able to get rid of your knee pain through the right things. So, unfortunately, I hear a lot of stories where, someone comes in with knee pain and the only thing that they do for them is the cortisone shot, right? Or pain pills, or they'll only send them to PT to work on their knee. And the reality is that there might be an issue way further up the chain. So even just starting with the quad the thigh muscle is a great move because
Right.
most people think that there's some simple thing happening specifically in this one joint, and it's usually more elaborate than that. So, when you're rolling up and down with the grain of the muscle, like your standard foam rolling, you're going to create some heat in the muscle. You are going to affect those more superficial layers of fascia, which are just mean the ones closer to the surface. When I teach people, I usually say, can you find the spot that feels the most spicy, if you will. Healthy fascia doesn't hurt. So if you are compressing an area of your body and you're like, what the what? Why is this so tight? Or this feels really sore, that's a good indication of like, hey, something is going on here. Your body is really not trying to hurt you, it's trying to help you. It gives you all kinds of messages on what really needs to take place. So if you can stop on one of those areas on the thigh or wherever that feel really tight, and then gently, again, bend and straighten the knee a few times and really just take it slow and breathe. I love to have the knee bent back and then rock the heel side to side because now we're going to cross fiber along the thigh fibers instead of only rolling with the grain. That,
Mhm.
I mean, on a scientific level, I don't know how interested this audience is on like the deep science, but the cross fibering element activates a specific cell in the fascia that creates the production of hyaluronic acid, which is full body grease. Like it's
Okay.
cushion for joints. It's the ability for muscles to glide more easily. It's you probably see it in a lot of face products because it's
Yeah.
very like hydrating and like cushiony type of thing, but we make it naturally, and fascia is a part of that. So when we cross fiber areas, that's what's going to hydrate more deeply and start that production of hyaluronic acid more. And so that tends to be a bit more fast acting as far as feeling the results. So with enough consistency, stretching, standard foam rolling, like you'll likely see a result. But my thing is just, hey, do you want to see results in less time? If you add the movement, that's like speaking fascia's language. It's like, oh, we're going to shift around just a little bit quicker. So I definitely think you were doing the right thing. I might even recommend seeing what the inner thigh feels like and maybe the outer side of the IT band, just
That's
to keep
it.
everything.
That's
Yeah.
actually what he
Mhm.
said it was, the IT band.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. And it could be, you never know
Gotcha.
these things.
Okay.
Even with a lot of walking, maybe depending on the shoes you have been wearing over time, or if you're carrying a heavy bag on one side all the time, like there's all these little repetitive motions and things that we do that just might shift things out of balance a little bit. And most times we don't feel it immediately, right? It's this
Mhm.
really slow onset. One of the most common things clients that work with me say when we start working on things is like, I had no idea my body felt like this, right? Or like, I had no idea this spot was so tight because it's sneaky, it's very slow. And so
Right.
usually it could be years of time before one day you bend down to tie your shoe and you throw your back out, or you get out of bed one morning and you suddenly have plantar fasciitis. And we all
Right.
think, like, I don't understand. All I did was tie my shoe or get out of bed or whatever that is. It's like, well,
Right.
it's actually the possibly hundreds, if not thousands of times that something happened in a slightly wrong position. And then your body finally was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not feeling safe enough to do this movement. Because pain doesn't necessarily mean you have a physical injury, right? Pain is a signal that your brain gives off when there's some type of a threat detected. So I don't know enough about your knee condition, but let's say it was a hip that was shifted on one side and that created a different wear and tear pattern on that side,
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
Okay. Mhm.
so if that was happening, the hip being shifted and that wear happening more on one side, the brain might have been like, "Oh, if we keep doing this, this is going to be bad." And so it'll start firing up a pain signal before an actual physical thing has happened. And I think that's important to share with people because I think there's a lot of fear around pain. When we feel pain, we're like, "Ooh, I better not do that anymore." Um,
Right.
which which is smart in the sense of like your body's telling you that something is off. But instead of fearing like, oh no, I may have torn a ligament or I may have completely thrown out my back, get on the roller, release some areas and see if actually you just didn't have enough space or hydration throughout one section of your body. And as soon as it's back to a happier state, that pain more than likely goes away pretty quick.
That's awesome. All right. So I missed the part where the difference is the IT band to the fascia. What's the difference between the two?
Well, IT band is actually mostly fascia. It's more of a tendon type of consistency. It's very dense. And it's,
Oh,
yes, it's mostly fascia. So I would say it's more connective tissue than muscle.
awesome.
And fun fact about that one, that most people think that their IT bands are too short. Like
Mhm.
they need to be lengthened, let's say, but the IT band can't really be lengthened because it's mostly fascia. And so what's likely happening is it's stuck to the quad or it's stuck to the hamstring or there's something else that has shrunk wrapped around that area. So whenever I tell people to do foam rolling, instead of rolling up and down the IT band, again, stay in one spot, bend and straighten your knee, lift and lower your heel a few times. It's way more effective.
While
Um,
you're rolling?
you don't have to roll. You're just staying in
Okay.
one spot. You just stay
Okay.
in one spot. It's kind of the same motion I was saying with the quad. You're just laying on your side, but
Okay.
that movement to break things up in that cross fibering slash three-dimensional way is going to be way more effective because you can't stretch your IT band, my friends. It's not stretchable.
All right. So that's amazing. All right. So you use the foam rollers and you also said you use another tool. What's the other tool? Is that like the ball? What do we use? Hmm.
Yeah, I love a lacrosse ball, which I know is not technically a recovery tool. It's a sports ball, but I
Okay.
love the lacrosse ball. It just has a lot of density and the little grippy surface on it tends to stick to the skin really well.
Mm.
I also love a small, about 6 to 7 inch in diameter, more squishy ball. You
Mm.
see them a lot in bar studios and Pilates studios, things like that. You can find them on Amazon, but they're really incredible for working on core fascia or fascia around the ribs, something that you don't want as much pressure as you would get with a foam roller or a lacrosse ball.
Okay.
I talk people through those types of techniques as well.
Okay, so that's amazing. All right. So, hey, we've both been educated on the fascia and the IT band and all the different things about movement and three-dimensional and all that. So if somebody that's listening that you have that problem, whether it's a knee problem, a hip problem, or back problem, or wherever, then you should check out Julia's work and get some answers on there. Now, you mentioned before that the fascia, when it comes together, it's usually because of hydration, but you also say in your work that drinking water isn't enough. So, how do we hydrate this fascia?
So our fascia, it's the coolest. I could just talk about fascia forever. But it's also like a little water irrigation system in our body. So if that plastic wrap were made up of all of these tiny little fibers, those fibers are what are carrying water to every tissue that we have. There's actually some really cool videos you can look up at fascia microscopically. You can see the little beads of water traveling along the fibers. It's really cool. It's so in order to get fascia to bring water to the right areas and make sure they're bringing water to all of the areas, there's two main things that need to happen. So, number one is movement. Without movement, water can't get to the areas that you need it. So, of course, we all should be drinking water, right? Like, please, I'm definitely pro water. Please drink water, some high quality water here. But if you're sitting at a desk for long periods of time, simply drinking water is not going to fully hydrate you because most of that water is going right through you. Because of the lack of movement, the water isn't getting anywhere. So mostly what you're doing is setting yourself up to go to the bathroom like every 30 minutes.
Right, 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 right.
So
Okay.
and the movement doesn't have to be full on exercise, right? It could be standing up and again, twisting side to side a few times, tilting your ears from side to side, doing a couple of squats. It doesn't have to be a workout, but just some type of movement is going to help your fascia utilize that water better. But
Mm.
then the second part is doing actual fascia release. So if we crumpled up a ball of plastic wrap and slowly dumped a bottle of water over it, how much water is going to get to the inside of that crumpled up ball? Like,
None. It's just
like,
gonna roll off the top.
right. So if you have lots of areas that have become really restricted, we have to work on those areas to start to unpull, like unstick all of those fibers. And then water and hydration is going to be able to get to those areas. So again, if you're really tight in your body and you're not moving, unfortunately, water is not enough. You're going to have to work on your tissues so that you can get your body to do what it will do naturally, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I like that. Well, yeah, um, I've done a lot of interviews with people talking about tissues, and you mentioned earlier when we were talking something about when you had emotional release, when you released when you started working on your fashion. You said we can talk about it later. But
Yeah.
I've had several guests come on the show and talk about your issues are in your tissues. And you know, so basically, yes, if you move, then you're getting those, you're releasing those tissue, releasing those whatever you're storing in their trauma or anything like that. So yes, so that's amazing. So maybe, yeah, since we have some time, you can talk about um, uh, is the issues in your tissues affecting the crumple up form of the fascia?
Yes, great question. So to your point, stagnation in the body is never a good thing, right? I know I'm throwing a lot of analogies in everyone's face here, but if the body
Analogies
is like an
are good.
aquarium, yeah,
Yes. Analogies are good. That's how people learn. So keep
yeah.
doing it.
Okay, so I was like, I know there's a million, but our body is also a bit like an aquarium where if the pump's not turned on and everything becomes still and more stagnant, things grow, right? Algae's growing all over this tank. The water is really gross. Uh, Nothing is very healthy living in that type of a tank. And so the movement component is like turning the pump on. And when everything's able to actually pump through the body, we're going to be able to detox better. We're going to be able to hydrate better. And we're getting energy moving. So, like, literal energy is moving. So, sometimes that alone can be really helpful for emotional health or just mental health in general. I'm certainly pro movement and exercise. But we also have, like I was mentioning before, this specific way that our fascia is able to communicate within itself. There are these things called proprioceptors in fascia. There's 10 times as many in our fascia than there are in muscles or any other part of the body. And proprioceptors are what mainly are telling us like where our body is in space, how can we move through space? Where do we fit in the worlds? How do we feel on the inside? Like all of this information is a 24/7 data feedback loop. And so, based on our experiences, our emotions, things that are happening in our lives, all of that is actually being logged by proprioceptors. So, essentially, every experience you've ever had has passed through your fascial system. So, when people are saying like your issues are in your tissues, there's some real scientific evidence that this is no longer a woo-woo thing. Like
Yeah.
your emotions and the experiences you've had in your life will absolutely affect fascia. And one of the other roles that it plays is to protect us from impact. So
Mm,
when we crash our mountain bike or even just bang our elbow accidentally against the wall, fascia is able to contract independently of muscle. It's very quick and subconscious, and it helps absorb shock and protect us from injury. Otherwise, anytime we accidentally hit our elbow against the wall, if things were dislocating and muscles were moving, that would be a real problem, right?
right, right. Okay.
But the brain can't tell the difference between what is a physical, real threat and what's a perceived one. So if we're feeling a lot of stress, if we've had, well, I shouldn't say if we've had trauma. I think for most people, it's like, when did we
When,
have that
right,
trauma? Yeah, just when.
right.
That is going to likely be registered as a threat to your brain, and your fascia is going to contract
Mhm.
again because it can contract independently of your muscle. So your muscle may not feel like it's contracting. That doesn't mean your fascia is not contracting a little bit.
Okay.
And in really prolonged cases of stress, they've done a lot of studies, mostly with PTSD people, but especially in PTSD, when fascia is experiencing that threat signal all the time, it will get stuck in that contracted state and even thicken over time.
Hmm.
So, our emotional well being actually has a lot to do with how much pain we're feeling. And some of us may have already noticed this. Like, if you have lower back pain or neck pain and you have a really stressful day at work, it feels worse, right? Like there's some
Yeah,
sort of heightened
yeah.
sensation that happens. Or I've had plenty of people with certain ailments and they go on vacation and they're like, oh, yeah, that's funny. I didn't have any lower back pain when I was in Hawaii. And I was like, oh, how
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But it's just a great example of understanding, like, yeah, everything that you're experiencing on a daily basis and think about how much things we're constantly exposed to and stressed out about. It
Mhm.
has real physical manifestation in the body for sure.
Yes, yes. So that's great. Yes. I love that bumper sticker too, issues in your tissues.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all know that.
Oh yeah,
We,
it's so wild too. I don't
I
know if you've
know.
experienced one, but the first time I was having the side of my neck worked on and it was really gentle. It was grabbing this outer edge of the neck, and I was very gently tilting my head and nodding a bit up and down, and suddenly tears are just streaming down my face.
Oh, wow.
And the first thing I do is I was like, I am so sorry. We just apologize. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm crying. It doesn't hurt. And I had to have someone explain to me, like, yeah,
You're
that
releasing.
stagnation,
Wow.
that trapped emotion in the tissue, it has to be, once it gets moving, it usually gets out, and it's way better to get it out of the body than just keep holding it in.
Nice. That's interesting because a lot of people would say I'm crying, but I don't know why I'm crying. So that's what's going on, huh? Hmm. I
Yeah,
know
and
why I'm
that's the
crying. Yes. Yes.
that's what's beautiful though, is you don't always have to know why or name it or know what it is. It's just something that's there, and you get to let it out. I mean, I have a box of tissues in my office for the last 11, 12 years here because it happens a lot, and people are like, I have no idea what this is. This isn't even really intense. It's like, yep, that just, you never
Wow.
know. It can be anywhere too. I've heard a lot about, oh, emotions are stored in the hips, right? We've probably all heard that one. And it's like,
Hmm.
it's, I wish the body were that organized that they would politely be like, "Ooh, we're going to send all our trauma to this one spot in our hip." But it's
Not
anywhere.
true.
Yeah. It's like it can be stored in the neck, in the ribs. I've had one from releasing my bicep in my arm, which is like, I don't even know what that is, but it's cool. The body just keeps track of its own thing. One of my mentors used to say, fascia is like the paper your life story is written on. It's like you never know what's in there.
Well, that's beautiful. I like that. So yes, listen, guys. Yeah, maybe you might want to research this fascia some more. So tell us about your work, the Fascia Remedy. What do you offer? And you know, are you coaching or yeah, what do you offer?
Yeah, so I do actual body work. My practice is in Golden, Colorado, and I will provide the compression for the fascia work, and I do most of the compressing with my foot. So my clients lovingly refer to it as being stepped on, but it is more complicated than that.
Okay.
Uh, so I'm looking for all of those areas that feel like the little crumpled up ball of plastic wrap, or it just feels dense,
Hmm.
inflamed, anything like that. And then I talk someone through a specific range of motion. So truthfully, they're doing most of the work, which I think is another reason this work can be so powerful because you have to participate in your own healing process. And that's true for really any aspect of your life. You've got to be a willing and active participant.
Right.
But I do a lot of instructing people virtually. I have an online foam rolling video library called Roller Remedy, where people will learn how to do it for themselves because really no one knows your body as well as you. And I find that it can be fun if you have that curious spirit of like, I'm just going to go through and see what's happening in my body and see what feels right for me, what's making this thing feel better. But I do a lot of teaching. It's essentially what I do with body work. We're just replacing the compression I'm providing with my body through my foot with a roller or a ball, which is essentially like the same size as my heel. So it's the same thing in a slightly different way.
Hmm.
And it really depends on what your goal is. So you can go through and release any area of your body that you like if you're looking to simply improve your overall health of that tissue or your mobility. But I found over the years that is maybe more specific to the fascia remedy in general is that where you feel pain is rarely ever the problem. So
Mm.
I've found many patterns that I don't hear a lot of other people talk about that are very effective, but most people don't know to go there. So, like a good example would be lower back pain when people
I
have
was
back
I
pain.
was just going to ask you that if there's fascia
Nice.
in your back.
Yes, there is, and we have a ton of pain receptors in our back, which is why it's one of the more common areas that we find is hurting for people. We just have tons of receptors back there. But most times we think, oh my gosh, my back hurts. This must be a problem with my back. So we get massages on our back. We go see a chiropractor about our back. We do some foam rolling on our back, which isn't wrong, but what more likely is happening is there's tension in a different area. And the number one spot I find is the quads, especially the upper quads into the hip flexors and the inner thighs, which are called the adductors. Those two are absolutely life-changing for low back pain. And everyone thinks they just need to stretch their hamstrings or stretch their back. So I don't just teach the how of releasing fascia. When you have a pain, I do a lot about teaching where to go because the where can be just as important. We tend to get really hyper focused again on that site of pain and we forget the body is more like a pulley system. So where is the real root cause and where are you feeling the pain, which is really a symptom? So I also have that in Roller Remedy as well. I have pain specific programs that will walk you through what areas are actually the most effective for the spot that you're feeling because it's likely not the place that you would go to first.
I love that because yes, I'm identifying with this conversation because yes, I have tightness in my back and my quads are hurt when I touch them with the
Hmm.
roller. If I'm gonna roll on the roller and I do the front of my thighs where my quad is, then I feel pain.
Hmm.
It doesn't hurt unless I roll on it. So that's the tightness that you're talking about. Yeah,
Hmm.
so I'm gonna go and pick up a copy of your ruler remedy. Like I said, maybe I even buy some for my home because I use the free ones at the gym.
Oh yeah. Which is great. I mean, it's so nice. A lot of these tools that are
Yes.
so effective are very easily located. You know, you can get a foam roller for $15 on Amazon, or it's likely already at your gym. So it's nice to have such easy access to these things.
Yes, that's amazing. All right. So yeah, you've got a new client right here. So so tell our listeners where they can go to for the ones that in Colorado, you can talk about your practice there, but most of our listeners are going to be an online audience. So give us your website. If you have a social media handles that maybe you share some, tips and tricks on ruler world or whatever on there. So give our audience how they can get in contact with you.
Sure. I'm the most active on Instagram, which is at Movement by Julia. But if you go to movementbyjulia.com, I have a free 3-day video series called Unlock Your Hips that will take you through three roughly like 15 to 17-minute foam roller routines that you can do that will help with lower back pain, with hip pain, with sciatic, with knee pain. It really is a bunch of different things, and it'll give you more of an idea of the type of foam rolling that I'm talking about because it is different than likely you've been using a foam roller before. So that might be the easiest step is to go there, get the free 3-day video series just so you can try it out and feel the difference for yourself.
I'm on it. I love that. Yes, definitely, definitely. All right. So, Julia, this has been a very insightful conversation. Like I said, this is new information for me. I'm having the same exact problem and nobody's ever talked to me about my fascia. I did not remember what the doctor called it, but as soon as you mentioned it, the IT band, and you say that's, but I figured it was fascia because when you're talking about rolling on a roller, and he said I was stretching it, and you said you can't stretch it. So, but whatever he was doing, whether he said stretches or release or whatever, it actually did help. And then the tightness in my back. Yeah, I mean, my doctor tried to say it was arthritis, but I know it was an arthritis. I knew it had something to do with tightness, because it doesn't hurt all the time. It hurts sometimes when I move. So yes, and it's great. My husband has sciatica. My mom has sciatica. So your information has wide reaches because a lot of people do have knee pain and back pain and sciatica. So your work is great. So, thank you for the free information to get started. And then if anyone wants to go deeper, then they can order whatever you have on your website. But yeah, and on Instagram, that's great, which is where I'm most active as well. So I will link out to you. I will have an article or a summary of my conversation with Julia on the show page, which is myhelps.us. I will link out to her website, link out to her free resources on her website or and her Instagram. So I hope that you guys got a lot out of this conversation today. There's a lot of people, I mean, more than 50% of people that are troubling with pain. So it's great to, have a label and an understanding of how you can work through that instead of taking pain pills. So great conversation. All right, Julia. So I love their conversation. I'm definitely a client. So So as we wrap up, do you have any last words?
Any last words is so dramatic. Well, I would just say, as someone who spent the first 22 years of their life thinking that there was no answer at all for me and realizing that that was wrong, I want to invite people to consider the same. I think we get a lot of feedback from the medical system of really intense diagnosis things or statements like, hey, you're never going to do this thing again. But that may not be true. There's still a lot that we're learning about the body and fascia, and it's easier to take care of it and change it it's easier than you think. So really want to just remind people that you're not stuck with the position that you're in. You may just not have been in the right spot or known the right thing to do. It certainly has changed my life and by working with fascia, and it's been such a treat to work with so many, hundreds, if not over 1,000 people at this point in time, and seeing the same great results time and time again. So just want to share that with you. That's not your destiny if you're feeling pain. I know how much it can affect your work, your family, your ambitions to do anything active. And so, yeah, I invite you to get started on that process.
Yes, yes, yes. And yeah, I was trying to remember earlier what I was going to say, but yeah, motion is lotion. So you said get moving.
I love all these rhymes. I love it.
Yeah, someone came on the show and said that, and I was going to say it earlier, and I got sidetracked. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Motion is lotion. Yeah. So go get moving. But what, Julia also is talking about is get some of the 3D things in, and if you don't know what to do or how to do it, then she's got free resources on her website. So amazing. So thank you, Julia, for being on the show and sharing this new information with all of us. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Transforming Your Mind to Transform Your Life. Today we were talking about transforming your mind on pain. And the doctors might tell you things like, oh, it's nerve damage and there's no cure because they say stuff like that. But what Julia is saying, it could be your fascia. So, there's something that you may be able to do. So that's amazing. All right. Well, listen, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Julia, for being on the show. Until next time, namaste.
Thank you.